everybody. This is Anthony Ariabench with the Film Threat Podcast. We have another exciting roundtable discussion of what we've been doing at Sundance. I'm joined by Bradley Gibson.
Hello.
Walter, I don't know how to pronounce your last name, so do the honors.
My name is Walter Arias, despite what Chris's over pronunciation of my last name would have you believe.
See, that's Arias is easy. Like I totally thought it was like Arialis or something like that.
It's Aurora Borealis.
Yeah, every time Chris says it, I see like subtitles too.
Well, welcome Walter Arias. Right?
Arias, close enough.
Arias. Fuck. Welcome, Walter.
10 more minutes.
Welcome, Walter Arias. And Bobby Schwartz. That was the easiest name out of the bunch, I think.
You're welcome.
Before we get into the movies we saw, have you guys seen anybody famous like rolling around?
I saw Annette Bening going into The Report, which is a movie I didn't get to see. I was scheduled to see, and I couldn't find a publicist to ask for a ticket. And she's much smaller than I would have imagined her to be. She's a tiny little person.
That's the magic of movies.
Yes.
Look bigger on screen, you know.
Apple boxes, man.
Also,
Yeah,
the film
Apple
I did
boxes.
see, which was The Sound of Silence, starring Peter Skarsgård, he was there for. So that was
Okay.
And you mentioned too, Peter Skarsgård is like kind of like he emits his character in real life a little bit.
Yes, he's exactly how you think he's going to be.
Yeah.
Like he's always entertaining when you see him on a film, but I don't know that he's necessarily acting because it was just Peter. Like, oh yeah, that's
He's just a quirky dude.
that's him.
Yeah.
Well, why don't you start off on The Sound of Silence?
Sure.
Since you referenced it.
So that was it was at the Ray Theater. I actually did a little research on the Ray Theater today too because the film
Nerd. Sorry.
like we don't have any of those around here.
Yeah, it's not like there's a round table of them right now.
The theater was actually rebuilt a few years ago specifically for sound.
Okay.
And they installed new Dolby Atmos system, which a lot of the theaters here have. And because I've seen a couple of films at the Ray, and I noticed it the first night. I'm kind of an audiophile, and I was like, oh, the sound in here is phenomenal. And this movie in particular needed to be shown there because it's about sound. And sometimes the lack of it, Sound of Silence.
Right.
But he plays a man who believes he has quantified which musical tones and chords drive which emotions in people, and also which ones can be negative. So, like if a film soundtrack has a real minor chord that's kind of throbbing through the scene, you'll be scared, or you'll know there's some tension
Right.
in the scene. So he's sort of quantified that and boiled it down to what he believes is a science, although he has trouble convincing other audio scientists that this is true. But people have heard of him word of mouth and have hired him to come to their house and see if there's like a negative sonic energy in the house.
Right.
And then he'll like do something that makes it nice.
Wow.
And he'll make the minor key a major key.
So he's like ghost busting bad sounds.
Yes.
Okay.
That's a really good way to put it, actually. And so he'll take a piece of copper tape and put it on one pipe and be like, all right, now it's a C. It was a G flat.
That actually sounds really cool.
Yeah, that's very interesting.
And
He should sound bust shitty bands.
there'll be a lot of bands left.
Yeah, that's true.
he did a lot of work though.
Yeah,
Which reminds me, I don't know if you've seen, there's a video of someone who's pitch shifted Nirvana's "Smells Like Teen Spirit" to a major key.
Oh yeah, and it's all
like this
like a
happy
happy.
song.
Yeah, it's amazing. Yeah, I know exactly what you're talking
It's
about.
a very upbeat song.
Okay, I'm checking that out after
Yeah, we
this.
should watch that video.
It's great. It's so good.
But anyway, that's the same idea that he's doing there. And, some people believe him, some don't, but he's totally immersed in this notion, so much so that he ignores contacts with other people, and he's kind of this Tesla-like obsessive in dealing with. So he goes around Manhattan with tuning forks to try to get the tone of a particular spot in Manhattan. And he's doing this giant map of Manhattan with all the notes, Right. And then when people invite him to their house, he does the same thing, keeps the note, and he puts it on his map. So because it looks like this, murder scene map of Manhattan. And it's very cool that he's doing that. Well, this woman calls him, who's heard about him from a friend, and he can't get her apartment to sound right. No matter what he does, he changes her toaster, and so that's how the film kicks off. She's like, I thought you were this magic man, and you could make my stress go away, and it doesn't work. And so then it sort of opens him up to like, what am I doing? Is any of this real?
Right.
Does any of this really work? And so it's a really fascinating story about him sort of reconnecting with the world through, the music, the sounds, and whether he's right or not, and her sort of take on it. And it's based on a short film called palimpsest. I didn't know that word before today, and what that word means is if you've got a media for something and you do a piece of art or a picture or something, and then you clear it, and then you put something else on top of it, but you can still see some of the original through it. And so that's kind of part of her. What's going on with her is there's something she hasn't quite cleared yet. And so that it helps to know that was the short film to really understand the new one. But it's a great film anyway. And
Is the short film like available on YouTube or something?
It is. Yes.
Okay.
You just look it up.
It's curious to me that they didn't keep that title because that is.
It's way better than Sound of Silence. Sound of Silence is super generic.
But you understand why they picked that too, because
Right,
obviously the song it'll sell better.
Yes.
But yeah, that I mean it's that what was the word again?
Palimpsest.
Palimpsest.
And it's a great word.
Yeah.
I had to look it up.
Yeah.
and I like words. Like someone hits me with a word and I'm like, that's not a word. Oh, it probably is. And I look it up.
Yeah.
So then that adds something new to my vocabulary. But overall, a great experience. And he was there for Q&A. And it's actually partially funded by Sundance. And so it took them less than a year to pull the movie together, he said. And they filmed everything in Manhattan. But anyway, yeah, great film. Rashida Jones plays the
I love her.
Yeah, same.
And it's a really fun movie.
Wow, very cool.
Did you see anything else?
No, that was it for today.
Oh, okay.
Came back.
Very cool. So I saw I saw a movie that like I've been telling people all day about, and I'm so excited. This is called Divine Love, right? It takes place in 2027 in Brazil. Christianity is kind of taken over. Like there is no separation of church and state. So the idea of divorce is still legal, but very frowned upon. And the main character is basically like a marriage counselor who like approves divorces, but like she kind of pressures them into getting together and going into this thing called Divine Love, which is basically like counseling sessions. Like she'll tell him, like, oh, God doesn't want you guys to divorce. You need to learn to love your wife more, like all this stuff, and just really kind of trying to sour them on the idea. So you find out that her and her husband are trying to conceive a child because there's a big emphasis on repopulating because that's, a Christian thing from the Bible. And so she feels like, she's not doing God's duty because, she's not having a child.
Right.
And he's going, like, he buys this, like, weird, like, infrared thing that he, like, puts over his testicles that, is supposed to increase, like, sperm count. Like, he's trying, like, fertility treatment. But meanwhile, it's putting a major stress on their marriage. So she goes into the Divine Love, like, counseling thing. And you finally, like, this movie, I was telling people, it's set up like a Christian movie. Like, it's referencing hymns, like, it takes itself very seriously. And then you find out that Divine Love counseling, like it starts out with, like trust exercises, like, fall into your partner's arms and all this stuff. And then they do wife swapping. So like two couples will walk into a room, like, they'll go off with like, they'll swap basically. And then right before they climax, they'll change partners. And it's supposed to promote intimacy. Like they don't go into
sure,
it
that's
very
healthy.
much. Yeah, it makes no sense to me, but it's interesting because these scenes are very graphic. So like I'm thinking, I'm watching it and I'm just like, look, like the Christians who watch this movie are going to be put off by the graphic sex.
Right.
The people who have no, religious beliefs are going to be put off because it's very heavy on that stuff. It's very there. Who is this movie for?
Yeah, they effectively alienated
both sides of the faith-based, religions and stuff.
The new church.
Right.
Apparently.
New church of wife swap.
So the thing I loved about this movie was the soundtrack. It reminded me of, is it Cliff Martinez from
Cliff
Drive?
Martinez?
Yeah. Like it's very synth and very, like
stuff.
very
driving.
Yeah. Very atmospheric. Like the colors are all like neon, like bright neon. It looks like it was, in the 80s. But one of the things that made me laugh is they have a drive-through like church service where like there's just this pastor like sitting there in a seat and she, like drives up like throughout the film a lot. She drives in, like rolls down the window, talks to the pastor. The pastor gives her a sermon, like tells her, like you need to be, more faithful. You need to trust in God. A baby's going to come. Like I promise it's going to happen. Would you like to hear a hymn? And like they play like, music and like she's like, praising Jesus and everything. and drives off. Like it's like the McDonald's of like, chapel.
I wonder how many lazy Christians would go to church if it was that easy.
Oh, totally.
Yeah. A line.
Yeah. So the ending, like, I don't want to give too much away, but it's very shocking, and it implies that there's kind of a supernatural element to it. But I enjoyed it. I think it was a little too long. I don't know who the audience is for because, like I said, I think both sides are going to be like weirded out by it. But I would recommend it. I had a lot of fun with it, and that ending. Like, I really want to tell you guys the ending, but I'm not going to be an asshole. Like, just check it out.
Yeah, based on what you told me, it's definitely worth experieing.
Yeah,
it sounds crazy.
Yeah, definitely. Walter saw a movie, and he was giving us the rundown, and like he was all over the place. But
I felt like the movie was a little bit all over the place too, because it did do a lot of jumping between. The present and the past.
But it sucked us in. Like me and Bobby were just like, go on.
Yeah.
So just to recap, I was watching this movie called Lost Holiday. It's a mixture of a drama, a buddy comedy, and a mystery movie. So it
sounded like a stoner comedy. When
it had elements of a stoner comedy,
but like grittier.
It was grittier and not as over the top as something like Dude, Where's My Car? Or
right.
I don't know. I can't think of any other stoner comedies right now.
Some cliche stoner comedy.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. It's definitely not cliched.
Right.
The music, because we were talking about music choice earlier, was very different. There are sections of synthesized music, but there are sections where part of the soundtrack is played with a Japanese recorder. It was very weird, very...
Like the flute?
It sounds like a flute the way this person's playing it, but it's apparently on a recorder.
Oh.
Right.
So it had like this almost minstrelly kind of vibe to it during these scenes that were, maybe not as upbeat. They were a little bit dark.
Sure.
But it was a very interesting choice of music for those scenes. But just to give a recap on what it is, it's this character decides after basically binging on some drugs to go find this missing socialite. And from there, the movie turns into a sort of like a whodunit. Basically find the MacGuffin, which is this missing socialite in DC. Very entertaining. I had a good time. It wasn't too long.
So you definitely recommend it?
Absolutely.
Very cool. Yeah. Cool. I love the fact that synth music is coming back.
Yeah, I mean,
absolutely.
It's been on its way back. And ironically, you mentioned Cliff Martinez. I think the Drive era of movies has been a big reason for that like comeback.
Yeah.
But there's like a new wave of like synth punk that is like finding its place in some really awesome movies. And it sounds like with the things Walter, the movie you just watched, it kind of allows a conflict of tone, like the drama and the comedy. There's like there's like a driving force behind something that maybe like the genre doesn't really fit that soundtrack or something.
I remember watching this movie and trying to figure out like what genre does this fit under.
Right.
It doesn't really stick to one genre, and I appreciated that.
Yeah,
it kept me guessing throughout the whole movie.
Yeah, it's kind of refreshing when you watch something that you can't really place. Like, that's probably a sign it's doing something fresh.
Yeah, most definitely. The standard soundtrack for independent film has long been just acoustic guitar.
Yeah,
and I'm so glad. Like I'm seeing these movies, and it's synth, and it's interesting. Like, who would have thought that? And in retrospect, it's perfect. But who would have thought that synth music would work in Thor Ragnarok?
Oh my gosh,
I love that soundtrack. Yeah. It's amazing.
I mean, Thor Ragnarok did a lot of reworking for that character, and I think the synth soundtrack really helped solidify the tone they were going for.
Yeah.
Like that. I mean, it is very 80s.
Yeah,
sure.
Flash Gordon-esque.
Yes.
Very much so.
Yeah.
So the other movie I saw is trending on Twitter right now.
Okay.
And it's Untouchable. It's the documentary about Harvey Weinstein.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. So we all know that Harvey Weinstein is a scumbag. My biggest...
Understatement.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I'm not allowed to use saucy language anymore, apparently.
Oh, right. You're in timeout right now,
Yeah,
mister.
I'm in timeout.
Someone cursed too much on the last episode.
I cursed a little bit too much, yeah. But anyways, so the documentary doesn't tell us anything like we don't know. There was only one side story that I hadn't heard, and I'll talk about it in a minute. But it was well made, well shot. The talking heads were interesting enough. It's just I wish there would have been more insight, because I was reading the synopsis on the Sundance app, and it was talking about like, we're going to talk to, college friends of Harvey Weinstein. I'm like, what was he like in college,
Yeah.
And there was no college friend. There was only like a childhood friend. And he says like 3 sentences, and none of them are like revealing or shocking. It's just like, yeah, he was fat and ugly back in the day. So he grew up pretending he was Don Corleone, from The Godfather. And that was it.
That's not surprising.
Yeah. Oh, no.
Kind of ironic. I mean,
not surprising at all. I just wish that there was more to it that I didn't know. Like I wanted to be more educated. And,
you feel like the talking heads, though they were good, like they could have probably got more interesting people to talk to.
Well, a majority of them were women who had experiences with his shenanigans. Like there was one of them was his secretary at Miramax for years. And she quit because she was seeing shit happening. She was just like, she walked into to Bob Weinstein's office and was just like, your brother is a pig and I quit. There was some actresses, none of which I recognized, which made me really, really sad, because it's like they were probably blacklisted.
Right.
They probably didn't work on a lot of stuff. But they were telling their story, basically the same story over and over and over again, as Harvey Weinstein would take them out and, show them a night on the town, party with celebrities like Leonardo DiCaprio. He came up a lot in the movie. And take him up to the hotel room and, just say like, oh, I want to talk about your career. And while they're there, he would, take off his shirt and just be like, I have a neck cramp. Can you give me a massage? And every single girl was just like, I had no interest in doing this. I tried to back out of it.
Right.
I didn't want, anything like, I left. And there was this sad, I can't remember the actress's name, but she was legally blind. She could only see straight. Like she couldn't see up or down. Right. And she was also had total night blindness.
Wow.
And she was just like, I'm not doing this. I'm leaving. And he said, well, that door is locked. You're going to have to go out this door. And the door was like this dark staircase, like all the way down. And she was talking about having like a panic attack, trying to escape this monster. But it didn't reveal any, anything.
Nothing you didn't already know about how shitty that guy is.
Yeah, and the story that I referenced earlier about not knowing, basically he beat up a journalist whose girlfriend was also a journalist, and she asked about the movie O, which was retelling of Othello. And it ties back to the Gore presidency run about how, Weinstein was afraid that if he released this movie, because Tipper Gore and Al Gore are very against violence and for censorship and stuff like that. Right. He wouldn't be able to ask for political favors later on. So that really pissed off Harvey, and he went on like a tirade on this girl, like calling her like awful names, and her, boyfriend stepped up and was just like, look, you have no right to talk to her that way. You need to calm down. She just asked you a simple question. And he went on and just beat the crap out of him, and everybody was taking pictures, but the next day, no one talked about it. It was in no newspapers. That was the only story I didn't know. But I would recommend it. It's definitely one of those movies that is very necessary. I think people are going to watch it, and people who have that kind of power are going to be in check because of it.
Right. Mm-hmm. We're getting a lot of stuff like that now with the new R. Kelly thing, and
it's
good people are being held accountable.
Even the Michael Jackson documentary that debuted at Sundance, which I really wanted to see.
What do we know anything? I haven't heard too much about.
I heard they had mental health professionals on site because it was so triggering.
Wow.
Yeah, it was 4 hours long, which is super long, but it's 2 parts.
Wow. They had an intermission?
Oh yeah, they did an intermission.
Okay.
But it's basically, from what I hear, very damning. And I don't know if you guys know this or not, but they tried to get it pulled from the Sundance schedule, and Sundance didn't budge. So
Wait,
protesters,
they tried to
the Michael Jackson estate.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Who have no connection to the production of this.
No production whatsoever.
Okay.
Yeah, this is very anti-Michael Jackson.
Right.
You know, very, very damning, you know, like obviously he was, you know, in court for child molestation and got arrested and all that stuff. But he always maintained innocence. And this is like, you know, no, like they have some pretty damning evidence in this documentary.
Wow.
So they were worried about protesters because there was like I'm sure like a Facebook group or something. Like they were anticipating it, and cops, like security was amped up.
Yeah, I heard the security was pretty big.
Yeah.
But then it ended up being like there was like 5 Twitter people like protesting out front.
Yeah.
Just like kind of shoot them away.
Yeah, like 5 protesters with like signs that just had Michael Jackson on it that said innocent. Like,
oh my gosh.
So, you know, the cops kind of showed up for no reason. There was
Which
cops
is
everywhere at every
Typical
theater.
of keyboard courage.
Oh
yeah.
my gosh, yeah.
Yeah.
It's
Day
like
and age
it's
we
a
live
different
in.
world when you get, you know, outside.
Mhm.
Right.
Yeah.
And see how many people actually do go outside.
Yeah. Yep.
But that movie comes out in
Especially here,
spring. And I would love to see it. I don't know what when Untouchable comes out or if it has distribution. I know nothing about it, but it was good, but it could have been better. I really wish it was better. And apparently that's kind of the general census from critics.
You know what it probably means is that there's going to be an even more like revealing documentary that comes out within the next year.
You know, I have a theory because this is a very timely documentary.
Yeah.
Like that, all that stuff happened like last year.
Right.
And I think that there was a scramble to get a documentary out for the next Sundance.
Right.
Because you guys weren't here, but last year at Sundance, they had the Women's March where everybody was wearing the pussy hats and stuff like that. And it was really cool to see.
Yeah.
You know, and there was this whole campaign about, you know, if you see something or if somebody's, you know, treating you away, like there's a phone number you can call, you know, to keep this stuff from happening, because it's absolutely disgusting to use power and, you know, hang it over somebody's head in order for sexual favors. But it happens all the time. And, you know,
Yeah. I mean, like that one story you didn't know about Weinstein, you know, imagine how many more of the, you know, we know so much about it now.
Yeah.
But imagine how many more of those stories we have never heard of. And like you said, a year is a really quick turnaround. That's not really enough time to investigate and stuff too. That's just, you know, just to edit that thing together.
Yeah, for sure. So that's why I think it's a little kind of bare bones. But again, I would recommend it.
Yeah.
So, does anybody have anything else they want to talk about? Add?
Well, I saw a movie as well. That,
Right. Oh my gosh. So you like this movie has been hyped, and I'm gonna laugh if it's like absolute like crap, because like Chris was just like telling me, he was just like, Bob, you saw this movie that's, you know, amazing, like mind blowing, like he has to tell you about it. And I was like, no, save it for the podcast. And like this has been ongoing since like yesterday, and I was just like, you know, I want to know about it, and of course I forget it when we're recording, but please go ahead.
I cannot forget about it, obviously.
Yeah.
I mean, you already kind of spoiled my opinion of it, but I was incredibly impressed. I went to Sundance, and it was my first time screening anything there. And the movie is called The Vast of Night.
Okay.
And it is
it KN or
no,
just
night,
okay.
like not day.
Yeah.
And this is this director's directorial debut. I believe he's worked in commercials and stuff before, but Andrew Patterson is the director. And I say that name because, you know, if you're listening, you should keep your eyes and ears out for it. I guarantee he's going to be everywhere within the next couple of years. Along with the 2 leads in it, Jake Horowitz, he plays this young radio DJ. Actually, before I get into that, I almost want to set up the setting of it, because that's the thing that really blew me away. You know, it takes place kind of the cusp of the space race and, you know, 1950s era. And the movie literally begins with a long push into an old TV screen, black and white, with this obvious homage to the Twilight Zone called Paradox Theater, right?
Okay.
And so it begins, we push in, it's black and white, and then it fades into color. And visually, the cinematography in this movie does some insane things. There's some oneers, some really long oneers in this that move through the entire neighborhood that they set this whole movie in, and you see the whole geography of it, and they're just pushing through on this. I found out later through the Q&A that they had a go-kart with the camera rig on it, and they were just like plowing through the streets, just trying to get the shot just right. And I'm getting a little ahead of myself, but visually it was incredible. But the setting, they set deck and dress like so many extras in this town, and you really feel immersed in the era. The beginning is just following around Jake's character, this DJ Everett, who works as the radio host for this high school, right? And they're having this football game, and everyone in the town is basically congregating in this one auditorium, right? And we see him kind of have a really good repertoire with everyone in the town, and there is like, you just get really immersed in the atmosphere. And this movie really takes its time. In a weird way, I think because this is his directorial debut, without maybe the infrastructure of like a typical 3-act structure, he kind of paced it like nothing I've ever seen before. It was really methodic in how it revealed information to you, which I'm kind of holding back on because I think the genre of this movie itself is a spoiler.
Okay.
So it's this DJ, and the movie establishes that among the town of people who really love this kid, there is the daughter of an old switchboard operator, right? Mm-hmm. Her mother gets preoccupied, and she has to go take care of something else, and so her daughter is manning the switchboard while the game's going on, and she's directing calls to the radio station and stuff like that, and eventually they get this call, or sorry, before that, there's this noise playing over the radio, right? And it's jarring and weird and mechanical, but organic, and they've never heard it before. And suddenly it becomes this, these kids running back and forth between the auditorium and the radio house and their homes and everything, like running through the town, trying to figure out what this sound is. And basically they find this frequency, and nobody in the town knows what it is, but everybody's distracted by this game, right? So it's really just up to these two characters to figure it out on their own, right? And you really get a sense of isolation because everybody's gone. It's just them. And, essentially the true nature of this sound based on, they get a caller that claims to know what it is, right? And I almost don't even want to get into that because it really unravels the...
So let me get this straight.
Sure.
Okay. You have been hyping this movie up for a day and a half.
Oh my God.
And you're not going to tell us anything about it because spoilers. I get it.
No.
But I'm in a hurry to end this podcast so you can tell me all about it because I'm intrigued.
Okay. Let me give you the act because I don't know if what I've expressed so far is really like a sell on the movie.
Yeah.
I'm really just, explain, the technically.
And look, to be fair, I don't think our listeners want you to spoil it.
No. And nor would I even if you made me.
Yeah.
I think that going in fresh really does this movie a favor. I was incredibly impressed by the performances. I mean, these are kids and they have
what age range?
So I think they're playing younger than they are.
Okay.
But the older kid is maybe 18 and the girl is like 16, I believe she says in the short, or
right.
Not short, in the movie.
Yeah.
And but so it's the overall technically immaculate, especially given the fact that it's a first time directorial outing. But the taking obvious like love and homage from Twilight Zone, and I don't know if you're familiar as a sound guy, you might be AM Coast to Coast. Have you ever heard of
No.
that? Funnily enough, in the panel after, I actually brought it up to the director. I asked him like if it was a reference, and he didn't know what I was talking about either. But it was like an old show where you callers would come in and they'd express paranormal things that were happening. to
Oh,
them.
yeah, I know what you're talking about.
Okay.
Yeah.
And
I didn't know what it's called, but I know, yeah.
right, so a lot of this movie is oriented around them. Like getting callers on the radio, like it's all very sound oriented. And we were talking about score. The score in this was incredible. I believe it was composed by the wife of the director's brother-in-law, and they essentially recorded this whole thing in a bedroom. But she's obviously an incredible violinist. It's very stringy, and as a result, the tension is high throughout. But it engages you, you know? It was a very different, it was a much more, like earthy soundtrack compared to the ones that were in the films you guys watched. But, it really, I think helped solidify that they're in New Mexico in the 1950s and there may be some paranormal things happening. And they need.
If it's Mexico in the 1950s, I can kind of guess what's going on a little bit.
Well, yeah, you can kind of assume where this may lead, but ultimately, like all of the standard cliches that come with things that are, you know, paranormal or alien, this movie presents and subverts, and it was really incredible, and I think the leads and the director and everyone in this project is going to go places for sure.
They're going to join the ranks of the Russo brothers, and you know, like Christopher Nolan got started Slamdance.
Chris
right?
Nolan premiered following at Slamdance, and I think Chris was on the panel that was the premiere.
Yeah.
The Russo brothers started at Slamdance, and Soderbergh has premiered a lot of things there, and
Lena Dunham, but we don't talk about her.
No, we don't talk about her.
She's pretty terrible.
But there's obviously a really incredible environment being nurtured over at Slamdance.
Yeah,
so it's not to be forgotten amidst the Sundance hype.
Definitely, I'm hoping to see some Slamdance movies.
There's definitely some gems over at Slamdance, and I think The Vast of Night was like, I mean, it hit it out of the park. I was, you know, and as a fan too of like, you know, again, not to spoil anything, but there's really only like a few really good abduction movies out there, right? And it's like, you know, the director even mentions like Close Encounters and things like that. But like once you've seen those, you kind of feel like you've seen that story, right?
Yeah.
And what this movie does is it takes that genre, but it never treats it like, you know, sci-fi. It grounds it, and it's very realistic. It takes it seriously, and that goes a long way with the sci-fi fan. I hate being talked down to, you know, when I see some tropey ass shit that I've seen before.
Yeah.
And it was just very refreshing. It was a great watch.
Cool, man. Well, I hope I get to see it. So anybody want to plug their social media?
I'm at Dual Animal on most things, and definitely check out the Film Threat YouTube channel. We have a lot of really awesome coverage, both on the YouTube and on the website coming out of Sundance and Slamdance. But go over and subscribe if you care about yourself at all. Do yourself a favor.
And Walter,
Walter, going through a tunnel. Yeah.
We'll never get there. It's okay.
No.
It'll just be the running joke.
Yeah.
And we should come up with a different pronunciation every time.
yeah. And you know what's funny? Like
Walter Uribe.
I totally would have gotten it like the first time had Chris not like screwed it up.
Yeah.
So now like I'm like,
You put too much English on that.
yeah.
And by English, I mean Spanish.
Yes.
Spanglish.
Spanglish, yeah.
So you can find me at Base by Heights with an S at the end on Instagram and the Twitters.
I don't think we follow each other on Twitter.
Well,
we need to
should fix that. Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
Bradley?
Yeah, we need to
And
come together.
I'm slacker on all that. The only place I am is Film Threat.
Okay, cool. And I am at This Game Cheats. I have an Instagram. Please don't follow it. I get creeped out. Like Instagram is very personal for me because it's pictures.
Guys, please stop stalking Anthony.
Please.
He's scared.
Yeah.
That's at This Game Cheat.
Oh,
Don't follow that one.
Also, please follow his cat's Instagram.
oh my God. Yeah, I just found out my girlfriend created an Instagram for my cats, and I'm really embarrassed.
Dude, I bet they have more followers than you, too.
I actually think my dog has an Instagram too, thanks
Oh
to
my
my little
gosh.
sister.
No, my cats only have 7 followers, and that
There are
irritates
other
me.
cats, too.
Yeah, that irritates me because they're adorable. They need more followers, so follow that one. It's I think it's like the Adventures of Ewok Wiki Tauntaun or something like that. I don't know.
Yeah, we'll link it somewhere, I'm sure.
Yeah, for sure. So follow Film Threat on Twitter at Film Threat. Go and check out our Patreon, which is patreon.com/filmthreat. Like Bobby said, follow us on YouTube. We have a channel that's constantly updated with trailers, with, the podcasts, with cool visuals and cool graphics and stuff like that. Bobby's the one that does that. It's amazing stuff that he does.
Oh, thank you.
And, we got some really cool stuff coming from Sundance. So please, our hashtag is Film Threat, hashtag Film Threat Sundance.
Yep.
So,
And we also have hashtag Film Threat Slam Dance.
yeah,
Covering some of those, too.
right. And that's it. Let's get out of here and get something to eat because I'm starving.
Del Taco. Woo!